They actually have a Muslim family, a family that is homosexual that has come and is part of camp here. And to me, that's amazing. Because that's what we should be doing, is going out into the community, reaching those people. So when they approach us about moving, they're like, hey, look, we don't want to displace you guys. I said, look, we'll handle it. We'll find another place. We'll find another home. Robbie did a good job. We appreciate him moving all our stuff over and setting it up. But we wanted to be helpful to them, that they would find a new home. So that's why we're over here. We're going to try and meet with Flo a little more regularly, especially in the summer. Jose can't be here tonight, but we were talking, and we want to try and do it a little more often with you guys. And one thing we will be doing is July 5th. We will, as a group, be going up to the State Fair. So that's going to be up at the Meadowlands. I always have fun at those stupid things because you can eat ridiculous things that you never should eat, and then go on rides you should never go on. And if you combine them, it's a very interesting experience. Coupled with like live animals and everything else that goes on at the fair. So the fair will be July 5th. The cost is probably going to be around $12. For that, I'll include admission and the ride up. So if you'd like to be there, there'll be a sign-up sheet in the back for that. But what time? We will get that to you. Because I don't plan that far out. I'm working on that, right? Working on getting more on top of things. Tonight, Ashley's going to be sharing the word with us, and I'm excited to have her share. But before we get into that, I need your help. How many people have heard of the Healthy Church thing that is going on here at Fountain? All right, there's a few people here. Fountain Life is currently undergoing a lot of changes, and I think God is going to bring us through on that. But one of the things that we had started is called the Healthy Church Conference. It's something that our district puts on, New Jersey puts it on, and it's a gentleman, Ron McManus, who some of you have maybe heard on Sunday Share. And basically the purpose of this, and we're going through it with 25 different churches from New Jersey, it's not just something we're doing, but 25 other churches, on if you could make your church the best it could be, what would it look like? What, how would you outreach to people? How would you connect people? What would your worship look like? And I think that's an awesome thing to do, because no matter how good you are or how good you've been, you can always get better, and sometimes you need to change things up a little bit. So one of the things that I'm privileged to be part of that group. One of the things that I've been asked, and I'm working with Pastor Billy on this, is working on connecting people back to church. All right? So basically, that's a fancy word for it, is assimilation. How do you get someone that walks into the doors for the first time, how do you get them connected? So what I wanted to do is, I wanted to ask you guys, we're just going to take a few minutes here, we're going to do something a little different. I wanted to ask you guys, what would you guys do to connect someone to your church that was coming for the first time, or maybe had been here for a month? Is there anything that you guys have seen or done or been a part of that has worked? So whether that's certain greeters or small groups or anything like that, is there anything that you guys have done or been a part of? Because I want to incorporate what you guys say into what we present and eventually make as part of Fountain Life Center. So that means if someone comes over for main service, if a student comes over for source, if a young adult comes over for flow, whatever it is, we want to make sure that they're connected, make sure they get to know somebody. So any ideas you guys have, we're just going to kind of throw them out. We're going to take about 10 minutes here before Ashley gets into it, I think. What you got?
I was just going to say something like what you did as far as when we came here, you invited us to help out backstage with the play and, stuff like that, I guess. Like if you're involved in something special in church, then, and you meet someone new, you can kind of bring them along to whatever it is that you may be involved in. I don't know, that could get them involved as well in something.
Yeah, perfect. That's one of the key things, is connecting people, not just necessarily to doing something, but that I got to know you guys by asking you to help out with the productions. And now you guys are more involved with productions than I am. But that's the whole point, bringing new people in. Anything else, that you've seen or done or been a part of about making feel people welcome?
I think, like, maybe a couple
outside of the church.
Yeah, outside of church. Maybe that's off topic.
No, that's good. Like I said, again, you know, it's you know, Christ calls us to go out into the world, you know, and sometimes that means getting out of the building here and going and meeting with people where they are. So no, that's perfect. No?
A lot of times, I think something as simple as giving people access to you can go a long way. You know, not just telling them to come to the church, but saying, hey, you know, contact me. You know, here's my phone number. You can be in touch with me. We can pray together. I can invite you. I can let you know when this is going on in the church and that going on in the church. It makes people feel like you're more genuine, and it's not so much you're trying to invite them to the church, but you actually care about their life. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And let me ask you a follow-up question on that. For you guys, would you guys want to initially connect to the leader or the pastor, or would it be, you know, a peer, someone your age, or someone with interests that you are that's already involved in church? Which do you guys think would be more effective? I think both.
Both?
I think both.
Yeah, both in their own way.
Both have their own.
That's a good point.
benefits and positives. Yeah.
Good, perfect. Go ahead, Steph.
How about like with my dad helping out with the kids, whoever, like if they're, you know, to get assimilated into super church to help out, like I can show them the ropes and help them out, like help them learn how to become.
Well, yeah, that's one thing, how to become. That's one thing that we haven't done is membership classes and things like that. I know they do something, but they're not really structured, and they're only, like, you have to start at this time or else you're, like, screwed to go back through. So that's definitely something, I'm just jotting my notes down here. Anything else? Bravo.
When I first came, we did the small groups. That's how I got to meet a lot of people, and it's just you would meet at people's houses. It was very comfortable,
and that's definitely one of the things that is being looked at as, you know, a way to connect people, because it's a lot easier to connect people to 4 people than 400 people. You know, they can feel like they know somebody that they've been there.
I forgot what it was called, but I remember one day at the source we did, like, I think it was like board games or something like that. But I thought that was really fun and a way to get to know people. Yeah. We need to do more of that. A lot more of that.
Got it. Sam, I think you have one, Sam?
Oh, I was going to mention how we have like greeters when we come into a church service, but maybe to have greeters when people exit, so if people have questions about anything of the service.
Oh, that's a good point. Exiters.
Yeah.
I'm going to call them exiters. I like that. Anybody else that hasn't shared something? That's it? Good. Well, look, that is perfect. If you guys don't mind, as we're going through the Healthy Church journey, that is going to be something that I'm going to ask for your input. Because we've been around the block, most of us, a few times. We've seen things. We've been to other churches, other groups. We're involved with things. We're the ones that get the calls, hey, we need help. So any way that we can connect better, and maybe even from your own experiences, like, hey, it would have been great if you guys would have done this for me along the way. That's the kind of stuff we want to know. Because, again, while we do some things well, you can't do everything well in life. And if you focus and realize on what you're not doing well and make that a strength, your organization can be so much better. And that's what we're supposed to be as a church, as a body. And that's not just Fountain of Life, that's flow here. You know, when we have somebody that comes in, you know, do you try and get to know them? I know Pastor Billy's thinking about doing an activity where you can't actually leave the sanctuary on a Sunday. He's going to put a timer up on the video board, and you can't leave until you talk to somebody that you don't know. You know, it's funny, but it's my example. Dawn and Asia, I didn't know them, but I was like, man, I always see them two together. I need some help. Maybe I can get them to help me out. And you know, I went in and introduced myself to them, offered, you know, see if they would help us out with the productions. And literally, no joke, they do more for the productions than I do now, which is awesome. Because then I can work on other things and get people involved. And, you know, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to make this a safe place for whoever's here, whatever they've been through, whatever background they've come from, and helping them connect to people that have been through similar things or may help them get through certain challenges in their lives. So this is perfect ideas. If you guys have any ideas about ways we can make Fountain of Life, the source, flow, anything better, please see me here. Because we want to make this the best it can be, and we need each and every one of you to help us do that. So enough of that. Tonight, I'm excited because this is a personal friend of mine. I've gotten to know her very, very well. We've been friends for a long time, but have become almost like brother and sister the last few years. You know, everyone has ups and downs in life, but that's what makes us who we are. And I believe she has something to share tonight with you guys. I'm excited to hear her speak, so let's give a warm round of applause for Reverend Ashley Fannon.
Reverend sounds so weird, even though I've been one since 2009, it's still weird. I'm going to sit down because walking around makes me nervous, or more nervous. Anyway. Yeah, I said nervous, I make up my own words. It's okay. So today I want to talk to you about Hulk versus Nehemiah. Should be coming up there soon. Matt made this real cool slide for me. There it is. I think it's so cool. I'm such a nerd. I love like the superheroes and whatever you consider the Hulk to be. So in my Bible reading in the past week, I've been reading through Nehemiah, and I became very intrigued with how he dealt with his anger in chapter 5, verse 6. But as I began to read through Nehemiah multiple times, because the first time I really didn't get it, I noticed that he was faced with so many obstacles, and he dealt with a lot of different emotions. I realized that we're all faced with giants in our lives, but it's how that we overcome them that really matters. What do we do when we're angry? How do we overcome depression? How do we rebuild our sadness and fear? And each time Nehemiah faced one of these events or one of these emotions, he seemed to handle it the same way. So you're probably wondering why I'm comparing him to the Hulk. When the Hulk gets angry, scared, sad, depressed, how does he handle it? He explodes. Literally under pressure, he explodes. And I realized that I wanted to handle my emotions the way Nehemiah does, and not the way the Hulk does. If someone hurts me, or makes me angry, or offends me, or cuts me off, and I'm sure you guys are it makes me mad, and media and the world tells us to retaliate. I love the movie The Hulk, and every place he seemed to go, people make him angry, and it seemed like people just kept pushing him until they finally pushed him too far. And he would look up with his eyes and suddenly turn green. He'd rip off his shirt, his pants would rip, but somehow he still had those little shorts on. Still don't get it, but, and he'd become all green and muscular and cause mass destruction. When I'm angry, I don't become green and muscular, but I do have, I hope not, but I do have a temper. And I tend to punch inanimate objects. Primarily the concrete walls in my basement, because I used to put holes in the wall when I was younger. My mom told me to stop hitting them, so I hit the concrete ones that I can't really do any damage to. The last time I did this was about 4 years ago. I can't for the life of me remember what my mom and I were fighting about, but I remember I was so mad I literally walked down my steps, and right in front of, when you're walking down the steps, is this concrete wall. And I just started punching it, and I wouldn't stop. And every time I punched it, I punched harder. After about 2 minutes of punching this wall, my knuckles were broken open and bleeding, My fingers were about the size of an Italian sausage, and I couldn't bend my hand, I couldn't move my hand. It was really bad. I remember I called my friends who are EMTs, and I said, I need your help. I need to get out of my house. I'm gonna explode on my mom. Like, she's lucky it wasn't her face. I really don't remember what made me that mad, but I went over to the house and I actually stayed over there for a couple of days. I remember while they were icing my hand and doing all this stuff, I had to reset a few fingers because I had jammed them. I remember like sitting there wondering, was it really worth it? Was the fight with my mom really worth me messing up my hand? Because at that point, I didn't have health insurance, so I didn't know like my hand was broken or what. I was just dealing with my EMT friends and the best that they could do for me. Thankfully, that day I learned that I need my hand and no more punching concrete walls. And thankfully, no permanent damage was done to my hand. But I realized that I don't want my anger or my emotions or the giants in my future, I don't want them to have consequences by me sinning when I'm angry. I want to learn how to properly deal with my emotions so I can overcome anything that comes my way. I read this story and it reminded me that I should not get so angry when I get cut off in the road. There's these two guys, and I guess one of them cut the other one off, and they pulled off to the side of the road to fight about it. And the one guy got out of his car, and right in front of his son shoots the other guy and kills him. The man obviously went to jail, but shortly after, he ended up killing himself. And I wondered, was it really just him getting cut off, or was it something that had compounded and that was just the last straw, and he didn't know how to deal with his anger? Movies in the world don't really show us the consequences of us shooting somebody, or they really don't show us the consequences of punching somebody in the face. It's kind of praised, but I really wanted to look at the consequences and see how to get past them and not have to even deal with them. Nehemiah was being faced with so many obstacles, and he shows us an amazing example of how to overcome so we can then overcome our giants and obstacles. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read you the whole book of Nehemiah, but the first 5 chapters are what I'm focusing on. So I'm going to paraphrase it, and then I'm going to pull out key verses. But I encourage you to go home and read the book of Nehemiah. You might have to do it a couple of times because there's a lot of like the genealogy. But once you get past that, it's a really like solid book in the Bible, and that it would be really good for your personal devotional time. But okay, so let me paraphrase what's going on. In the book of Nehemiah, there's a group of people who are being attacked, not from surrounding countries, but really from within. It was the Jewish nation. They had been conquered by Babylon over a century before, and their city of Jerusalem had been destroyed. And obviously this was devastating for them. Their temple, their city, their walls were destroyed, and their people were exiled and scattered. The Bible said to like 4 different corners. But half a century later, Cyrus, the king of Persia, conquered all that Babylon had taken. Nehemiah was his cupbearer. The king noticed in chapter 1 that Nehemiah was depressed. And it came to Nehemiah's attention that his people were in a bad condition, and his hometown of Jerusalem had basically become a large pile of rubble. So when the king inquired as to why Nehemiah was sick or depressed, he had already been thinking on this for days. He had been weeping, the Bible said weeping, fasting, and praying for days before the king noticed. Nehemiah had the courage to tell him that he was depressed because of the condition of the city. And back then you didn't just like talk to the king, like it was a big deal if the king asked you, what's the matter? So the king asked what did he want him to do? And he said, send me home so I can rebuild it. So the king let the Jewish people return to their city to rebuild and worship their own God. The Jews returned and rebuilt the temple under the leadership of Nehemiah, and they were rebuilding the walls as well. During the construction, the small countries around them were threatening them, striking fear into the people of Jerusalem. So right there, they've already dealt with depression and fear, and that's just in the first chapter. Nehemiah actually ended up having to divide the workers, some to stand up like the army and some to be working, but everybody had a sword on them. They were always prepared to fight. In addition to this, times were tough, and many Jews returned to the city all at the same time. And this caused like a population explosion. It caused famine, and many of the Jews were hungry and were barely scraping to live. So through all of these hardships, God's people were pressing on until something happened that got Nehemiah really upset. They began to attack one another, and they began to take advantage of one another during this difficult time. Nehemiah wasn't a guy who was, if you read it, he seemed to be like really clear-headed and calm and cool, and he kind of seemed like collected all the time, which I'm not, but so that's why I was looking at Nehemiah. I was like, wow, like he was dealing with all of this. He was in charge of all of these people, and he's still keeping his head on straight. So, but this like ticked him off that they were stabbing each other in the backs. They were taking advantage of one another. So I began to notice that every time something happened, whether it was when he was depressed, when his people were afraid, the drama that was going on, anger, he didn't explode like the Hulk, but he did three things. The first thing he did was admit that what he was feeling. So if you see in Nehemiah 2:1-3, I'm reading it from the Message, but he has it up there from the NIV. I just think it makes more sense from the Message. It was the month of Nisan and the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king. At the hour for serving wine, I brought it in and gave it to the king. I had never been a hand dog in his presence before, so he asked me, "Why the long face? You're not sick, are you, or are you depressed?" That made me more agitated. Long live the king, and why shouldn't I be depressed when the city where all my family is buried, is in ruins, and the city gates have been reduced to cinders? So right there, he admits that he was depressed. And in Nehemiah 5:6, and in the Message it does 6 and 7 together, it says, "I got really angry when I heard their protests and complaints. After thinking it over, I called the nobles and officials on the carpet. I said, each one of you is gouging your brother." So he admits that he was depressed, he admits that he was angry. He openly admits both of these things. He didn't try to shove it down or repress it, which I know is something that I do. I try to hold it back because I don't like confrontation. He acknowledged the fact of both of these emotions. And that's the place where many of us need to start. When we try to hold in our emotions, we end up becoming like the Hulk and exploding and doing a lot more damage than if we would have talked about it. Don't repress your feelings and admit it like Nehemiah did. When I was talking to the urban kids from Urban Extreme on Sunday morning, one of the girls was like, "I do that by writing it on Facebook." I don't necessarily think you need to admit it on Facebook, but you can admit it however you like, I guess. But step 2 is to stop and think. In verse 7 of chapter 5, Nehemiah says, after thinking through it, that was how the New Living Translation said it. And the NASB said, and I consulted with myself. Bottom line, Nehemiah took a moment to stop and think. This wasn't new for Nehemiah. In chapter 1, when Hanani brought him the first bad news, the walls are in ruins, he wept. Verse 4 says, and then he fasted and prayed. It wasn't until 4 months later that he acted on it. That's a lot of time to think it over. I know this week something happened at my house, and I was livid. I was so mad. Literally, I preached this Sunday morning, and I got home, and I was so mad. And I remember Mom saying, "Don't say anything. I don't want there to be a fight." And I was just like, I'm so mad. Like, I just wanted to scream and punch somebody. But I didn't. I kept my mouth shut, and for the past 3 days, I didn't say anything to the person who made me mad. And today when I got home, before I came here, I practiced what I'm preaching. So whatever I always say, whatever I preach, I'm always going through it because it's true. I'm always working on my temper and my anger. And over-emoting, because I'm an emotional person. But I sat down with the person and I talked to them calmly. I didn't yell, I didn't fight, and it went so well. And I just was like, wow, Nehemiah's plan really does work, like these 3 steps. And even Thomas Jefferson said that when we count to 10, we should count to 10 when we get emotional. I'm more realistic and I have to count to like 23,000. But the point is to allow yourself to cool down and gain perspective. We can control our anger and our emotions. We don't have to feel like that we can't. Some of us just need to leave, go on a walk, go shoot some baskets, go for some retail therapy. Whatever it takes to go and think it over like Nehemiah did. I'm down for retail therapy if you need help. Step 3 is the last principle we can learn from. Nehemiah is also found, the last principle we can learn from Nehemiah is also found in the verses that I'm going to read to you following. Nehemiah called a meeting together with all the people after he came up with a proposal, and he communicated it well to the people. He said, after thinking it over, he made 3 accusations. The first is in verse 7. You are charging interest to your brother, fellow Jews. This is wrong. This would be the way someone should treat a strict business relationship, like a harsh pawnbroker. It's different translation. Nehemiah doesn't just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. He doesn't just fly off the handle. He thinks it over, he acts rationally and thoughtfully. But things got worse, and Nehemiah clarifies that this is his second accusation. You're putting your brothers, and this is verse 8, excuse me. You're putting your brothers into permanent slavery. This is also wrong. Leviticus speaks specifically about it, instructing Jews to release their fellow Jews who had served as slaves after a certain period of serving. So they were charging like a ton of interest on things. They were putting their own people into slavery. And then Nehemiah just didn't leave it at that. And I think this was the best point that he made. He said, you are looking bad in front of surrounding nations. And that's in verse 9. These people weren't just taking advantage of their brothers. They were being watched. Local enemies around them, their names were Sanballat and Tobiah, might have sat back laughing, watching the Jews destroy themselves from within. It's hard to remove reproach when you can't even get along with your brother. More importantly, we see the need to be careful with how we conduct ourselves in front of non-believers. Paul writes about this in Philippians, in chapter 1, 27 to 28. Whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, contending as the one man for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. And Peter writes about the fact that our conduct can affect the pagans around us, or the unsaved things like pagans. But 1 Peter 2:11 to 12 says, Dear friends, I urge you, as aliens and strangers in the world, to abstain from sinful desires, which war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that, though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. Nehemiah was a living example of how to act in front of others, an example that we can still learn from today. Again, I was tested today at work when my boss, he has the worst temper in the world. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how he hasn't gotten sued, but he just explodes, kind of like the Hulk, and screams and yells, and it's kind of scary. And every single time I want to explode back. That would be the easy thing to do. But everybody at my work knows that I'm a Christian. And if I exploded back and did exactly to him what he did to me, it wouldn't be good for my Christian example. I end up shutting down and like crying when he leaves the room, but I just sit there respectfully. And when he comes back, I'm the only person he ever apologizes to, because everybody else yells back. Everybody else is inappropriate back, and I still believe in respecting my boss. And that's just something that, not that I learned necessarily from Nehemiah, but I also don't want to lose my job, so I just don't yell back. But it shows something that I'm the only person that he comes and apologizes to. So after thinking it over, Nehemiah makes these charges to the Jews. It must have been pretty well presented, because in verse 8 it says they kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. So if we take the time to think, and if we take the time to pray about it and think before we speak and act, then there's going to be nothing that anybody can say to you. They're not going to be able to defeat you at that. So we can follow the example of Nehemiah and apply his 3 steps of how to handle our emotions. We admit what we're feeling, stop and think, and communicate a well-thought-out solution. What end result do you want? Although the whole method might look like the temporary answer, it doesn't ever bring the result that you want. If the drama and infighting and emotions were allowed to continue, the rebuilding of Jerusalem would most likely have taken much longer, and maybe even have been unsuccessful at the time. Sometimes I've noticed in my life, the giants that I'm trying to overcome keep coming back because I've never successfully overcome them. But when I apply this method, which I had to, like I told you this week, hello, I'm here. But when I apply this method, which I had to this week, the outcome is much greater than if I would have exploded Hulk style. To make sure I was heard. A lot of times that's what we do when we're feeling emotional. We want to make sure that we're heard, but sometimes that's not important. Sometimes you just have to know what you know and realize that everybody else doesn't need to know it. And this week, my anger, like whenever I'm speaking on something, it's not just one thing tests me on it, everything tests me on it. It's been tested over and over. I realized that the more I admit it and take a step back and explain my point, getting past it is so easy. And I really think works with everything in your life. Taking a moment to think before you act is very smart in any aspect, at work, at home, with your friends, in your relationships. It doesn't matter where it's applicable. So I wanted to just encourage you guys tonight. I didn't want to take too much time, but I wanted you guys to just ask yourself, how am I reacting in these situations? Can I be better at it? I know that I can. Can I turn the Hulk off and the Nehemiah on? No matter what the emotion or what you're dealing with, these steps to admit, think, and communicate will help you before you react. And I just want to pray tonight. I didn't want to be too long, but I just want to definitely encourage you guys to really try and really go home and read Nehemiah. It's a good little forgotten book. sometimes I forget about him, and I feel bad. Me and Nehemiah are friends now. And I kept wanting to learn more about him. I was telling somebody, I preached his message on Sunday in Urban, and it's changed completely from Sunday till now because I've learned even more about Nehemiah and who he was. And I'll probably read the book of Nehemiah a couple more times before I move on because it's got that much in it. So I just want to pray with you guys. We're going to bow your heads. Father God, I come before you today, and I thank you for the words that you gave me, God. I thank you for what they're doing in my life. I thank you that you gave Nehemiah to us as an example of how to live and to show who you are through us, God. I pray that you will just work in each and every one of our hearts and our lives, that when we're feeling emotional, whether it be depressed or angry or sad or fear or scared, whatever the emotion may be, God, that we can take a step back. We can admit to you, God, that we're feeling this way. We can talk about it and then communicate it, God. I just pray that you'll work in each one of us over the next coming days and weeks. In your name I pray. Amen.
All right. Ash, we appreciate that so much. One thing that, as I was back, I was jotting down some notes because how many people have ever played an athletic event with me? Okay. Or I've coached. I get emotional. How many people can get emotional? Okay, it's not just anger. It can be fear, it can be depression, it can be anxiety, worry. Emotions affect all of us. We just have different emotions for us. And the crazy thing, and Ash, you can add this next time you do the Hulk message, but the Hulk knew he had a problem. Like, I love superhero movies. The Hulk knew he had an issue. Like, when he would start to get worked up, he would try and go hide or try and run away or try and get help because he knew if that switch went, people were going to be in trouble. People were going to get hurt. And that's so crazy that even the Hulk knows that he's got to be careful. That he understood Nehemiah's first step of understanding what he was going through. But he couldn't get past the next step to stop and to think it over. Because once he went, it was gone. So it's crazy how different, you can sometimes get something a little bit or part of the way, but if you don't get all the way through it, you can never really get the victory, no matter how much, well, I know I have a problem here. Well, yeah, but you got to get help for it. And that's crazy that Nehemiah, all that he was going through, look, we're people. We're going to go through things, we're going to go through challenges. But it's how we handle them that defines our character, that is our testimony. Like Ashley shared, that you don't want people talking bad about you. Everybody was afraid of the Hulk. You don't want people afraid of you because how you react. Because if we can handle it, next time that person that's your coworker, your boss, your friend, your cousin, your whatever, they're going to come to you when they have an emotional issue. Because we all have different emotions. Some is anger, some is fear, depression. There's so many different issues. It's not just anger. If we can get a hold of these and take that example of Nehemiah, hold on, count to 10 or 23,000 with Ashley, or I'm probably going to go up a little higher sometimes, all right, we're being real here. But if you can get that in your own life and apply it, you can get ahead, you can be an example, you can help people. Because while people were afraid of the Hulk, Nehemiah was considered one of the great leaders in the Bible. And I want each and every one of you here to be a leader, to be great at whatever you do, whatever place you are in life, whether you're a teacher, a student, a parent, a coach, whatever it is. We want you here to be the best. And taking some of the examples from Nehemiah, because guess what? You will deal with stupid people in your life. Right? Everybody said amen. 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 You will deal with stupid people. I have a guy at work that his slogan is, people are stupid. Right? He said, guys, you're not going to believe this, but people are stupid, and he'll tell us a story. There's sometimes people don't think logically because their emotions, they're turning into the Hulk and not Nehemiah. So we want you to be blessed tonight. We want you guys to be successful at whatever you do, and we're going to try and continue to help equip you guys to do that and get through some of our own issues along the way. So we appreciate you guys being here. If you guys could, a few of you could stay and help. We got to put some stuff away because we got to hide our stuff because the Healthy Church Conference is actually coming in this auditorium. So we're going to make sure they don't steal our couches because then I'll be mad. Then I'll turn into the Hulk. We appreciate you guys being here, and we'll be in touch. If you'd also like to come out to the fair with us, the sign-up's in the back now. I don't know if you just want to grab that sheet and just drag a table over so we can do that. But we love you guys, and we'll see you soon.